Welcome to Does It Make a Sound? The podcast where we ask if an indie band pours their heart and soul into making a record, but nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? I'm your host, Dustin Owens, and these other landlubbers joining me here today are my Fall Down Trees bandmates Porkchop Branch and Nolin McAlister.
Hello. How you doing?
Glad to have you guys here with me again today. In this first season of Does It Make a Sound, we're going to go through our debut album, Night Terrors, with one song per episode, and this is episode 5, Water Finds Its Way. Go listen to Night Terrors on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Tidal, etc. If you haven't listened to the other episodes in Season 1 of Does It Make a Sound, we recommend starting with Episode 1, Hand of God. As I mentioned, this does go one song per song on the album, but also we talk about things in those other episodes that we'll make reference to in these episodes, and you won't have any idea what we're talking about. It's already taken us 2 hours an episode to get them out. We can't be repeating ourselves. So go back, listen to Episode 1, and then 2, 3, and 4. And this one's 5, and we'll meet you back here in, I don't know, 8 hours? Something like that. Make sure to like and subscribe to Does It Make a Sound? Please give us reviews. I think we've got one review, and it may have been me, on any of the platforms at this point in time. Give us reviews. That helps us in the algorithm. Even if they're 4 stars, if that's what you believe is true. If that's what you believe is true, then give us 4 stars. Go ahead. Just review, please. Follow Fall Down Trees on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. If you got feedback for us about the show or anything like that, and you don't want to leave a 1-star review, you can just email those to us. Or you can message us on the social pages. We are falldowntrees@gmail.com. This show is still a work in progress. Just like our music, it'll never be polished, but hopefully it's at least entertaining. We are proud partners of Guttersville Records. Guttersville is a collective of independent musicians, most of us based here in the Southeast. Is there like a name for the corner of Western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, Northeast Georgia, and Southeastern Tennessee?
Oh, man.
Like there should be a name for like the lower Appalachians, maybe?
Maybe.
That would make sense. Wherever we are.
The Quad State region.
That's what. Yeah, we're in the Quad State region.
I just made that up. I don't know if it applies.
It sounded official.
It did.
Anyway, whatever. That doesn't have anything to do with anything. Go find Guttersville Records on all the social platforms. Lots of good music coming your way. Not only was Night Terrors by Fall Down Trees, which you should listen to, as we've already mentioned, the very first long player release from Guttersville Records, but we've got several rolling out now. You want to go check out 5-Year Fever Dream by Chroma Combs, and next up is Shit Kicker from Cowlick Moon. I don't know if that's the official name or the working title, but I like it either way. That's coming up too. I make a special guest appearance. I play some nasty, distorted harmonica and some very clean and fun sounding harmonica and some backing vocals. But even outside of that, all of the other songs are even better because I'm not on them. Make sure to go listen to that when it drops here. Maybe by the time this podcast goes out. I don't know. I didn't do the math. Does It Make a Sound playlist on Spotify. So every single episode, when we make mention of other bands and other things and music here on the show, we can't play it for you or they will boot us off of the podcasting platforms for stealing music that we don't have license to play. But we can put them on a playlist on Spotify and you can go listen to them there. So make sure to go find... what is it? Fall Down Trees?
Fall Down Trees.
Yeah, find Fall Down Trees on Spotify and look for our Does It Make a Sound playlist. And there's also links in the show notes for all of the things that we reference over the course of this episode. Speaking of this episode, this is Water Finds Its Way. It's the 5th song on the album, and it's the end of side 1. So kind of a... even for the podcast here, because of the way it's organized, it's like a time to take a break and think about the things that have happened up to this point before we dive into the second side. It was recorded 3rd, though, so it wasn't intentionally meant to be the 5th song on the episode. We recorded it right after Hand of God and Night Terrors, which does have an effect on the sound of the song and all of that, too. But I think 5th was probably the correct choice. As the album follows our main character through an isolated night in the shed, this is the final moment of reflection before turning out the lights and going to sleep. There was a time where I considered having little soundscapes in between the songs, and I know we all talked about this, and it was just going to be me moving around in the shed. And so at the end of this song, it was going to be, you would hear the mattress squeak and then the light turn off. and then that's like him going to sleep before midnight. And then when side 2 was going to open with Shoot the Messenger, you would hear the light turn back on and him like grumble as he like climbs back down out of the loft and off the mattress because he can't sleep because his brain is going crazy, right? And so I tried those and they sounded stupid because it was just like clack clack, and you're like, what the hell am I listening to? It didn't make any sense. It sounded really good like as an idea, but in practice not so much. I actually have a line for a song that I've been thinking about for years, Porkchop. Maybe you'll help me write it. It says, like sex in the shower and blackstrap molasses, some things are better in theory than in practice.
Oh, that's a great
pretty
line.
solid, right?
I like it.
So
That's deep.
Help me finish that one off. All right, anyway, what were we talking about? This song was written about the same time as Shoot the Messenger. As a matter of fact, I think in between writing all of Water Finds Its Way, I wrote Shoot the Messenger. But this all happened in a month. So I wrote both of those songs in July of 2020. Within that 30-day span. That's a pretty good month for me.
Yeah.
Especially late era me. Like early era me, I was a very prolific songwriter. It's just 9 out of 10 sucked. Now I write like 2 a year, and they're pretty solid most of the time.
Yeah.
So I'll take it. This is probably the most explicit COVID song. So the majority of the songs on the album were written or changed, like rewritten, kind of during the COVID era. And this was an era where we weren't gigging, obviously. Nobody was. We weren't having band practice. We didn't really have like a functioning band because Matt had left Woolly Boogers just before that. And so I spent a lot of that time sort of, rewriting and redoing, a lot of old songs that I had that I wanted to make work. But with even considering that, like, this is the only one I think that like really explicitly like calls out things that were happening during COVID. I do remember like how this song started, like how I started writing the song, which I usually don't have such clear memories of. But I was trying to play Powderfinger by Neil Young. And I was trying to do, I don't know if you guys know that song. I think we might probably played it with the band. But it's pretty famous as being one of the songs that Neil Young wrote and sent to Ronnie Van Zant for Leonard Skinner to cover. And so this would have been just right before the plane crash. And so obviously there's like a historical feud between Leonard Skinner and Neil Young. But it turns out that these guys actually really, liked each other and liked each other's music, and they kind of became buddies after that. And they say that Ronnie Van Zant was buried in a Neil Young T-shirt, which is pretty awesome, and that Neil Young may have been a pallbearer at his funeral.
They
sort
broke
of thing.
kayfabe.
They did what?
They broke kayfabe.
What does that mean?
That's a wrestling term. It's a carny term.
Give me details.
Kayfabe is to be fake.
Kayfabe. So that's like the rule that you can't talk about,
like you
wrestling.
You can't be seen riding with your opponent in a car to the next town to wrestle. You have to ride with the bad guys if you're a bad guy. Good guys ride with the good guys.
Oh, I love that. What's it? Kayfabe.
Kayfabe. It's carny talk.
Oh man, I love that. That's now in the vernacular.
It started in the carnivals. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Good job, Chop.
So Neil broke kayfabe.
He did. Yeah, but they kept it quiet, so maybe not, right?
Yeah, I guess
like
not.
They're just rumors. There's not like pictures of Neil Young as a pallbearer or anything. So anyway, whatever. I don't know why we're talking about this. But Powderfinger's the song that he wrote, and I think that maybe Skinner was going to record it or something. It would have been perfect. It's my favorite Neil Young song. I think it's like the diehard like Neil Young fans like top tune. Like it's one of those like you'll never hear it on the radio or anything like that. Watching him play it live last year, which actually figures into this album because I went and saw Neil Young while we were working on these recordings, and not long after I got the pedal board, but we're going to save that for another episode. Anyway, I'm going to go back to this song, Water Finds Its Way. I was trying to learn Powderfinger, and I was trying to play it by myself, and I was finger picking it. And there is a chord change where you go from a C to a B minor, and then back down to the C. And that's easy to do when you're strumming, but when you're finger picking, there aren't like open notes that work or anything like that. And I was kind of struggling with that change. And so I started moving my fingers around and playing what I thought were different types of B minor chords, right? So I kind of changed the bass line a little bit, and I was like, all right, I can get to the bass easier this way. And this bass note sounds cool, like it makes the chord sound different. As I was prepping for this show, I discovered that chord has nothing to do with the B minor. It is a G major 7. I looked it up, finally, after all the band practices where you're like, all right, what's the first chord? And I'm like, I don't really know, man. It's some kind of B minor, I think. It turns out that I changed my fingers enough to create a G major 7 chord.
You're the new Mel Bay.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm trying to work out this chord change, and I'm moving my fingers, and I come up with a chord change for Powderfinger. And it doesn't sound good with Powderfinger, but it sounds cool. So then I just start playing that chord change over and over again, and that is the verse part of Water Finds Its Way, and that's where it all started. So yeah, didn't know that was what the chord was until I prepped for this episode. I'm glad I finally looked it up. So once I started playing that chord change over and over again, then I realized like this would make a really good song anyway, and I started playing with melody. So let's play with the earliest version that I have. At this point in time, the song was called Heaven Help, and this is just a song idea. So this is me just like very beginnings trying to figure out if it's worth making a song out of it.
Ravens in the sun, and you won't ever know how close she came to the morning snow. When the harbors broke open wide again, I wept for you, I cried for my only friend. But times change, nothing stays the same. Heaven help the fool who tries. Heaven help the fool who tries.
Yeah, so I was still working it out. My favorite thing about that, it cracks me up because I say heaven help the fool who tries, and right when I say tries, I just completely blow the guitar chord, just like
Dustin tried.
Yeah, bombed it. So I was talking about how I kept changing that chord. I don't know how you usually play a G major 7. I don't think it's the way that I'm playing it in the song, and the way that I'm playing it, I'm wrapping my thumb around the top of the neck and hitting the bass note. And it took me a while to get that, like, to train my hands to do that, because I just made up a chord that I didn't usually play, you know? And you can actually hear throughout that recording, like, that bass note buzzing, because I'm not quite mashing it down hard enough. Now I can do it without any sort of effort at all. I don't even think about it. There's definitely a Nick Cave influence in what I'm trying to do right there. Like in how I'm singing and all of it. I'm a huge Nick Cave fan. He's one of my absolute favorite artists of all time. He has a newsletter called The Red Hand. So he wrote Red Right Hand, if anybody's unfamiliar with him. That was in Scream and 1,000 Peaky Blinders. Was that it?
I think so.
Yeah, like it's been in all kinds of movies, but he's so much more than that. But it's a great song too. And so anyway, I'm a big fan, and you can definitely hear the influence in what I'm doing. Pieces of the chorus are already intact, but I'm still just making up words everywhere else. The melody of the verse is going to completely change. Like, that's not even anywhere in the ballpark yet, mainly because the time signature changed. So if you're like in that voice note that I just played, the whole thing is in 4/4 time. There's not actually a change in the time signature. Within the month, I did adapt that into 6/8 time later on, but right now the whole thing's in 4/4, and that's causing me to like sing and phrase and come up with things melodically in a very different way. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and play that too? So this is still July of 2020, and this is me continuing to play with the song and changing the chord progression, how I'm playing it.
Killing myself with cigarettes and anxiety. path that I should be on is laid in front of me. I know the way to the top, I can make the sacrifice. I try to be tough, I try to be mean, but I'm just one of the nice guys. And times change, nothing stays the same. Heaven help the fool who tries. Heaven help the fool who tries.
I'm killing myself with cigarettes and anxiety. I feel like that line has to come back, you know. And even in this, like, times change, but some things do stay the same.
If you want to know what the South sounds like in the summertime, that's a pretty good representation.
Freaking cicadas, man, like chirping in almost in time with the music or something. I wonder if I'm playing it that fast because that's how fast the cicadas are chirping, because it's pretty fast.
Yeah, you can feel the humidity from that from that recording.
Absolutely, that sounds like July.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I believe that date when I looked at it. So changing to 6/8 time completely changes the feel of the song, even though the melody and the meter, like in what you just heard, isn't quite there yet. But just to like, so to give everybody just a quick example, I'm going to get into this a little bit in the technical side of it. I won't go too deep. But what I mean in like 6/8 time, like it's the difference between, in the first clip I played, it's 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and in this clip, the way I'm playing the guitar is 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. So it's the difference in that feel and the number of beats, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But 6/8 is like a go-to time signature for water songs. I don't know, like Leviathan is my other seafaring tune. It's in 6/8 time. Like, it sounds like the ocean to me, I think. I think it feels like you're standing like on the bank of the lake or like on the shore of the ocean, and the waves are crashing in. And like, you look out at this massive body of water, and it's like the water's standing still, right? Like when you look at the ocean, you don't think of it. It seems like one big, solid, immovable object. But then, like, if you focus in, like, on the waves, you see that it is constantly moving, and it's constantly churning, and there's like a rhythm to this crashing of the waves. So there's movement there, but it's not like it's flowing. It's that churning feeling. So what happens? I have this churning feeling, like in the verse of the song. And now when we go to the chorus, I kept the chorus in 4/4 time. And so that feels like it's moving. That feels like it's going somewhere. So unlike the verse, which kind of feels like the ocean, the chorus kind of moves like a river, right? Like it has a flow to it. And it also makes the song sound like it speeds up, even though the tempo of the song never changes. It sounds like it goes faster in the chorus. Fellers, something is happening right now that has never happened to us when we record. And I think this is the most appropriate song that it could have, like, it's almost poetic.
Yeah.
So folks, I don't know if, I think they can probably hear it. That is the sound of rain on the metal roof of the shed. And we have recorded all of the Night Terrors tracks, as well as 4 episodes of this podcast, and never once have we got caught in the rain in a recording session. And here we are, water finds its way, and it's found its way onto the metal roof. So I hope you folks enjoy the atmosphere as long as it lasts for the rest of the podcast.
Don't fall asleep.
I know we're playing them a sleepy song already, right? So anyway, we go from the churning ocean into the moving river when we go into that chorus. It also means that the time changes right when I sing, times change. And that's like a little like inside songwriter joke. You know, like it's just like a little thing that doesn't matter. It doesn't change the feel of the song or anything. It's just a subtle little thing that makes me smile when I hear it. And it adds a little bit of like levity to what's a pretty serious song, but mainly it's a wink at Porkchop. Because every time I do anything like that in a song, I'm like,
love it.
Porkchop's going to hear that. He's going to catch it the first time he listens to it, and he's going to think it's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. anytime you can throw something in that it's just an inside joke or an inside nod, I love it.
Just a little something extra there.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that the maritime feel influenced the water reference in the song, because that's there before water finds its way. That's Arlo snoring beside me too. So the water thing becomes like the dominating metaphor of the entire song, and it's not even there yet, and is influenced by the music of the song, which I think is kind of cool. The lyrics did fall into place by the end of the month, minus the last verse. So the last verse, I don't know when it appeared, sometime over the next 2 years, but it wasn't in the sketch here, or the demo here that I recorded the month that I wrote the tune. It also gained its proper title here. So this is from the end of July of 2020, a sketch of Water Finds Its Way.
You can hide behind a mask, behind a screen, behind a casket. You can curse your neighbors walking down the street. Paint shadows on the walls, run naked down the halls, ball your fists and cry and spit and stamp your feet. You can hide inside your head, crawl beneath the bed, hold your breath and try not to make a sound. Compare yourself to Job, don a scapular and robe, pray what goes around don't come around. But times change, water finds its way, no one can hope to stand against the tide. Heaven help the fool who tries.
All right, so that one's still moving a little fast, like faster than it ended up, but it's almost exactly like it's going to end up on the record at that point in time. And once again, like from inception to completion, all over the course of the month. Also, the squeaks just pierce through you guys' head a little bit. Holy God, man, that drives me insane. But it does. I wrote or came up with versions of a lot of songs right around the same time that ended up being on sets that I was playing, like right after this, that all used this sliding, my first finger on the B string sliding up and down, but never leaving the string of the guitar. So all the chords that I was playing kind of had this moving note where my first finger never left the B string. And I would play like 3 of those back to back, and it would destroy my finger. And I'm just like, God, I have to split these songs up on a set list, because if I play these 3 back to back, my first finger's going to fall off, before the end of the set. But that's what that squeaking is that finger sliding up and down the strings. I'm going to dial that down for the listening audience. So lyrically, the song was born directly from the fallout from COVID and from lockdown. It starts out, you can hide behind a mask, behind a screen, behind a casket. Curse your neighbors as they're walking down the street. And I mean, obviously, like that COVID reference there, hiding behind the mask and the screen and the casket. But also, like you see people out and about, and you're like, how dare they? I'm stuck in my house, and this person is going somewhere. COVID was a weird time, man. Paint shadows on the walls, run naked down the halls, ball your fists and cry and spit and stamp your feet. You can hide inside your head or crawl beneath the bed, hold your breath and try not to make a sound. You can change your name to Job, don a scapula and robe, and pray what goes around don't come around. Scapula. I had to look that up. I didn't know. I needed a word. And I was like, I need a word, and I want maybe something like a priest would wear. I need it, I need robe to rhyme with Job, but what else would they have other than a robe? I came up with scapular.
It's pretty intense.
I just think it's funny that I know that I like pulled up like a list of words. It was just like, what would fit here and sound good? I'm going with scapular.
That sounds deep.
So anyway, yeah, and I mean, obviously through all that, like describing all of these different like emotions and what it felt like, the cabin fever of COVID and and of lockdown, hiding inside your head or crawling beneath the bed and holding your breath, like these different ways that people are reacting to the situation. The big thing though, like pray what goes around don't come around, is a major theme like of this song, and to me like one of the most heartbreaking parts of the song in the context of the record and knowing what does happen, right? Like, there was this idea during COVID that, like, we're all going to learn from all of this and be better about things. And then what happened is it was like we were all deprived of the things that we wanted, and we just went back out twice as bad as we were before, right? And just like overdid it because we were, locked down for the amount of time we were in. The idea that things change and water finds its way, but some things never change, and we don't often learn from our mistakes. And that's kind of the, like, all of the hopeful elements of the song turned out to be wrong, right? And that's like one of those things, like, it almost sounds prophetic, but it also sounds like bullshit, like times change and water finds its way, and I think that is one of the things that adds a sort of element of sadness to all of this, like looking back on it down the road. So going into the next verse, you can kiss me in a week. Please don't mumble when you speak. It's hard enough to hear you sobbing through the walls. That line, that is like the hit me like a ton of bricks line right there. So my ex-wife, I don't know that we've really talked too much about her on the show or anything other than just sort of offhand references, because this is my 40-year-old Taylor Swift divorce record. But this song directly related to her. She caught COVID. I think it was in May of 2020. It was really early on, before we really knew anything about what was going on. And so when she got sick, the kids went to stay with my mom, which was right up the hill, like next door. And I stayed down at the house and tried to do what I could to take care of her. We were all scared to death. Like, we had no, like, at this point in time, all we know is that people are dying. Like, and how do we keep from spreading it around and making sure the people that are most vulnerable are taken care of? But also, like, she's scared, like, she's sick and she doesn't know how bad it's going to get or how it's going to go. And so, even though this is a breakup record, she was a huge inspiration for my music for years and years and years, and the beautiful kids that we created continue to be. At this point in time, like, we had a healthy and happy marriage, 2 beautiful kids, like, and like even now, we still work to raise them together, but we were really close, at this point in time in particular. And watching her sick like that was scary as hell. And I know, like, me personally, like, I'm not the best caregiver. And so she's in a bad place, and, we're kind of like stuck in this house together and have no idea what's going on. And we're away from the kids, and the stress level is through the roof. She's taking frustrations out on me. I'm sure I was taking them out on her too. We're the only people that each of us are in contact with at this point in time. So if she's sick or if she's mad or whatever the case may be, she has a tendency to mumble. And the mumbling is one of my pet peeves, which is, that's the whole reason for our divorce. Like, that is the one thing that we could never get past, is she had a tendency to mumble, and that really irritated the shit out of me. Obviously, tongue firmly in cheek. But it is, like, I can't hear very well. I think a lot of it is being in radio and having headphones on and talking into a microphone, playing really loud music, going to really loud concerts. Like, if I can't hear, like, I can't hear very well if people don't enunciate. And so that does kind of drive me insane. And so that line in the song, like, it's like, it is a direct reference to that. Like, you can kiss me in a week. Please don't mumble when you speak. Just kind of an asshole thing to put in a tune, but I'm in it. I'm in it with all the love I had. But this is the line. It's hard enough to hear you is a play on words, right? So I'm saying, please don't mumble when you speak. It's hard enough to hear you. Like, it's hard to hear you, but also, like, it's difficult to listen to someone you love that's crying in misery, and there's not anything that you can do to help, right? It's hard enough to hear you sobbing through the walls. I felt like I was making it worse. I also had like a level of guilt because I'd never caught it, right? Like, and I don't know what it is. I think they should synthesize my blood or something, but up to this point I haven't. And I've been exposed. I worked in retail during COVID. Like, I was exposed over and over. And this is one of those cases where I was there all the time and constantly waiting. Like, I just knew it was going to come, and it just never did. So after kind of like that introduction, the lyrics that come after that were things that I wish that I had said, right? And I'm not a solid enough person, or at least like in that moment, to have the wherewithal to actually say these things. You know, this is the poet in me, right? Is like, if I could live up to the poetry that I write in real life, I'd probably be doing okay. But I'm sure I was just an awkward mess constantly the whole time that it was going on. But the idea here in this lyric is what I wish I'd said, right? We'll get through this somehow, look back some years from now, and say we're stronger than we realized after all. Within the concept of the record, the character's looking back on this like 4 years down the road and realizing that this was actually the beginning of the end, right? And so in that moment, what I'm thinking to myself is like, we'll get through this, you know, we'll look back, we'll say we're stronger than we realized, and it turns out we weren't. And that's like that adds a heaviness to this tune that I don't feel like it had early on. COVID flipped our lives upside down, right? Like just about everybody. It also completely changed the dynamics of our family, and it changed like what we wanted the future to look like, and the things that we realized were important to us turned out to be different things. At this point in time, though, like this is what I'm saying. Like, this is the idea that I'm building, and this is very like Christmas by the Sea too. As I write these same visions, like these same things that I want, like, and it's such a Norman Rockwell-esque, thing. Like, it's kind of funny for me to see this in my writing so often. But we'll plant a garden in the spring, build a birdhouse by the swing, and a sunflower teepee for the kids. So she decided that she wanted to quit her job and homeschool the kids. She wanted to start her own business where she could work from home. This was probably like our first major disagreement in our marriage. And it was a tough one. Like, I felt everything that she was saying and believed in her in that way. But also, like, for me, I was scared. Like, I was scared financially of what was going to happen and how all of it would work out. So even though, like, I'm writing in the song about this stuff and the things I wish I would have said, it's also the way I wish I was, right? Like, I never had the guts to do the things that I'm actually writing into the tune. She did it. She quit her job. She homeschooled the kids. We planted the garden. Like, I don't know that we ever built the birdhouse or had a swing or anything, but they definitely matched the imagery of what I was trying to get across. Like, she went out and was bold enough and brave enough to do the things that I was writing and wishing I could do within the tune. The sunflower teepee thing, that was something she did for the kids as part of the homeschool program. And so it's not a thing I had ever heard of before, but I thought it was amazing. But you plant sunflowers like in a little circle, and as they grow, you can lean them over and create a teepee out of them. I think that the grass cutting guys ran over it with the lawnmower. So it never came to fruition, which is also a great metaphor for how all of this turned out. And then that last line, we'll quit our 9-to-5s, reinvigorate our minds, and trust that it'll work out in the end. Sitting in the shed, like on those long, lonely nights, like the real me that became the character in the thing, trust that it'll work out in the end seemed like the cruelest damn joke that I ever wrote into a song in the history of my life, right? Like, that is a line where I'm just like, what a naive fool, I was at that point in time to even have that, like, it's sort of my cynicism in growing older, right? To even have that idea in life, right? That don't worry, it'll work out, it'll all work out in the end. That's more a thing I tell myself to make myself feel better about things. But like, looking back now, and even like as we were recording the album, and this is the best thing about being out of the heavy shit, right? And being able to like reflect on it later on, is it has worked out in the end, right? It just wasn't the way that I expected it to be in the song, right? It wasn't the working out that I thought would be there, but it did work out. If you stop looking at it at the right point. Like, it's not going to work out eventually. And this is the tough thing about life, right? It's like, there's a line in a Drive-By Truckers tune, I think. The secret to a happy ending is knowing when to pull the curtain. I think that's about the truest thing I've ever heard anybody say, right? You just got to know when to stop the song. You got to know when to, like, count the score. That's the only way you can figure out if it's a happy ending or a sad ending. Anyway, very upbeat here with the rain beating on the roof. The song does strike a balance, though, I think. There's like a nostalgia to it, but also for a time we thought it was as bad as it could get. I don't know if you guys have experienced this at all, but I have, like, COVID nostalgia. Like, I know how miserable so many things were, how sick people were, people died, like, it was awful. But there were, like, days where I woke up in the morning and went outside and worked in the garden and made the kids lunch and, like, went through a thing that would have been, it was living in a way that I wish I could live now, right? And there is this element to that where I can kind of look back at this really bad time, and because I can put on the rose-colored glasses, I can kind of have a longing, like a nostalgic feeling for it. There's also sort of a defeatist reference to fate, like within the song. No one can hope to stand against the tide. That ties into the themes from Modern Prometheus and A Work Grotesque too, and a theme that runs throughout this album is like this difference between sort of our fate in a good way and our fate in a bad way, right? Like, but looking at it in almost a helpless, or questioning whether or not we're actually helpless, I think is more what it is. And then also surrendering to change, which is also pulled up in songs like Shadow in the Setting Sun. So the final verse of the song, I don't think I got around to that until 2022. It almost makes fun of the hopefulness of the first two verses, I think, and kind of the use of the cliche in Water Finds Its Way. So that last verse, they don't make them like they used to, except for hypocrites and voodoo and rubber bands and mousetraps and bad advice. So just like I say the cliche and then I name off all of the things that make that cliche completely invalid. Though our fears have different names, we stand and face them all the same and try to build from ashes something nice. So this is definitely the COVID reference, right? And looking back on it 2 years down the road, there was this thought that I had, and once again, it was probably naivete, but that we were going to learn these lessons, right? Like, I remember sitting out on the front porch of my house in the city. Now, I say in the city like a country boy, right? Like, in the city of Anderson, all 30,000 people that live here. I live in the city limits. Houses are close by, and I can see them. I don't like, there's no skyscrapers, right? Like,
Yeah.
just, it's a large town, I think is what, we've got all of the chain restaurants you could ever want.
Yes.
They're all right up the road on Clemson Boulevard. But, you know, we have some wildlife that runs around, you know, deer and rabbits or whatnot. But I was, there's a fox, the Lindale fox that lives close by. But I was sitting on the front porch of my house and turkeys walked down the road, like 8 of them. And they were just strutting down the road. And there's like, it took a matter of weeks of people to stop driving around and like going everywhere for animals and plants to start like taking back over the earth in this way that you know, was almost surprising. And then I'm seeing all these people that are going out like hiking and fishing and like experiencing the outdoors and stuff. And there was this part of me that was like, we're gonna learn lessons from this, and we're gonna come back with a better like approach to life, right? We're gonna try to build from ashes something nice. It's also a reference in like the theme of the album, the concept of the album of him rebuilding after everything fell apart, right? And how devastation is an opportunity sometimes. But then the line, "Pray to God what happened once won't happen twice." You know, that comes in and that hits, and once again, like, we just went back to not learning from our history, just like we often do. So by August of 2022, I was trying to start playing music again. I didn't learn any lessons either. and bringing in some other people. So this was the initial sprouting of the Fall Down Trees. So it was me and Porkchop and Bradley Webb, and playing second guitar. He played a little bit of mandolin. You played a little bit of mandolin. I played harmonica. So we were kind of an acoustic band. But this is one of the songs. Like, it was a brand new song for me. I never got to play it with a band, and I thought it would work well in that setting. So this is with Bradley, the original Fall Down Trees, doing our version of Water Finds Its Way from August 11th of 2022.
They don't make them like they used to, except for hypocrites and voodoo, and rubber bands and mouse traps and bad advice. And though our fears have different names, stand and face them all the same, and try to build from ashes something nice. Watch this.
I think I said watch this because I was about to do a weird change in the middle of the song and y'all didn't know it was coming. Really tasteful, beautiful, like airy approach to the song. It sounds really good like that. That upright sounds really good. You're playing a little straighter than you would end up on the record, but it worked in an acoustic setting. I think all of the acoustic instruments were one of the reasons that we decided to go with Fall Down Trees as the band name. Picking a band name is about the worst thing that you have to do as a band. I can't imagine anything else worse in the entire world than trying to find a band name. What'll happen is you'll come up with something really cool, and then like you'll look it up, and there'll be like a Norwegian metal band with 47 followers on Facebook that already owns the website, and it's like that constantly. We had a band one time we came up with called the Subterraneans, which we should have known somebody would have that, but we didn't see anything on an initial search, and then started promoting ourselves as Subterraneans, and then our friend Trev, who we've mentioned in the show before, popped in and let us know that there's an English band that had been playing for 30 years that was called the Subterraneans, and I was like, well, shoot. So we became the Subterranean 5, and that's one of the things, like, people say that we change band names a lot, and I think we kind of have, especially if you consider my path, because I've operated multiple bands at a time, But in the grand scheme of things, I feel like we haven't, because it's just so damn hard to come up with a band name that you can use.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I think like we obviously pulled that name from the Tom Waits song, "Get Behind the Mule." Choppity chop, like Porkchop over there, gives the axe in the wood, meet me by the fall down tree. And playing a bunch of acoustic guitars, it tied right in, but of course we kept it, and now we've got non-acoustic instruments, I guess. Well, they're still acoustic. It's still got wood in it, right? It's a wood reed.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're still woody.
We're wood adjacent.
I was also starting to like think about gigging with Scott Glenn on drums, like as a two-piece. And as far as band names go, he came up with the Dusty Scotts, which is about as good as any band name I've ever had. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty solid. Dusty Scotts. So anyway, let's play a version of Water Finds Its Way from the Dusty Scotts from August of 2022. So completely different vibe to the song right there. Sort of reminds me of the band The National. I don't know if you've listened to them, but they kind of have these sort of the songs are like ballads, but they have a real driving like rhythm section in the background, and it sort of creates like an anthemic ballad, I guess, if you will, but something you can jam on, like you could like stretch out over time. that version, like with me and Scott, like the way that song feels, that would have sounded great with Nolin, like playing saxophone over the top of it too. Like it's got like it's powerful. Like it's got a powerful vibe that I don't think we ever really achieved with anybody else. But we did turn it over to Nolin. So when the Fall Down Trees expanded to include Nolin, and then we brought in Jonah Glenn on the drums, this was a song that we played too. So let's play a version of that. This is from October of 2023, live at Brews. We've played a lot of the live at Brews. So this is a coffee shop up in Pendleton, coffee shop and beer joint. They probably wouldn't like calling it a beer
joint.
joint.
It's a joint.
That doesn't seem quite right. Like a beer.
It's a very nice establishment.
A beer room.
Beer establishment.
A beer shop. A coffee shop that turns into a beer shop.
It's
they sell beer, and they don't brew it there. It's brewed at other places. Yeah. I don't know what
they
you call that.
brew the coffee.
It is a very nice establishment. I'm not trying to talk trash about Bruce. We love Bruce. Thank you for having us. We're going to play us playing Water Finds Its Way out front of Bruce back in October of 2020.
Times change, water finds its way. No one will stand against the tide, and heaven help the fool who tries. They don't make them like they used to, except for hypocrites and voodoo, rubber bands and mouse traps and batted fire.
Very nice, Nolin.
Man,
that
some
was
great
beautiful.
soprano there, I believe.
Yeah, that was soprano.
Yeah, man, that was gorgeous, man. I love playing music like that. Like I love that airy, spacey. But what sucks about playing it live is it lulls everybody like into a sense of security. It's like they feel at home, so they start babbling on about stuff in the background. And you can hear in that track, like there's just constant, like Nolin is up there just like pouring his heart out into a soprano saxophone. And just, it's like you can feel the leaves floating. It's the most autumnal thing that you've ever heard in your life. And if I'm sitting at that show out in the audience, I'm like in the front row with my eyes closed, like feeling the breeze, like lost in it. And then somebody's back there just it's crazy to me. So we would love to play all stuff like that, but instead we play Night Terrors next because we have to do something to shut you up. You know, we may scare the shit out of them, but at least we get their attention, you know, when we blast away on electric guitars. So, you know, like, people wonder, like, playing live music. I see all this stuff, like, in this area right now. Like, there's a lot of struggles that are going on with venues staying open and giving people places to play. And, you know, a thing that we've learned, you know, this is harsh, but this area is not very welcoming to music. Like, it's just not. Like, there are plenty of venues that would love to have bands or do have bands, but the audiences don't support music in a way that they do in so many other areas. You just go down the road to Athens, right?
Yeah.
And you can go into any venue, and it's not just college kids. Like, it's people of all ages in different venues all around the town that all support people of their age group and other age groups that get up there and play their guts out. And they'll stand and watch the show and listen to the music. And, you know, obviously some of it is how you perform and what you do. And for most bands, the first thing that they consider is the audience that they're playing to, and you've got to get that audience involved. Porkchop, your brother is one of the best that I've ever seen at that, right?
He's very good.
He fits in, like, in this area. He knows the crowds in this area so well, and he can get them into a thing in a way that most people just can't. But there are very few places and people around here that just want to hear good music. Like, show me the thing that you do best, and let me hear it, and I'm going to stand and I'm going to listen to it, and that's really tough. And we've run into that over and over and over again. I think that's why we are so diverse in the styles of music that we play, right? Is if you feel like you can grab somebody for one song, right? If we can get them with one tune, then we can hold their attention, down the road. And you'll see that in our set list too. Is we'll start out kind of conventional and playing songs that are familiar to people, and then we like push that boundary over the course of the set. We get it just a little looser and a little wilder, right? Like where we might play Mama Tried exactly like the last time you heard Mama Tried. We're gonna play Jolene with like a guitar sax duel, right? Like we're gonna put, and then by the end of the show, I'm screaming in the microphone through a harmonica doing Rolling Stone, and like we're getting real weird with it, but. Usually once we can kind of get everybody into it, then we can hold on to them. But man, that first phase, and sometimes you just get in front of a crowd where it's like they want the background music. They're not going to pay us any attention, and that's tough sledding. Yeah,
that's something. At least around here, there are some good venues around that really focus on music, but they are few and far between, unfortunately. And I don't think it's necessarily the owners of the establishment.
No, it's hard for them to do it because the support of the people that come to listen, right?
People are there to talk to their friends instead of, and look, that is a great thing too. But if there's going to be music, you might want to find another spot that night, because as a musician, if I go to a place and somebody's playing, the majority of my attention is going to be on that music, because I want to hear what they're doing. I know they've practiced. I know that if they do, especially throw an original song out, they have worked on this. As a musician, I know. Now, whether I like it or not, it's up to them what they give me.
That's right.
But I'm going to give them my attention. Show me what you got. I'm willing to listen. But we don't have that. We don't have that. Not to be complaining too much, but we don't have that like Asheville and Athens have. We're stuck in the middle, halfway between Athens and Asheville. So
that's true. And
we're very much more sympathetic because we know what they've been through.
Yes, that too. On this song, Jonah is almost perfect on the drums, man.
Yeah.
Like he's killing it. And I think like listening to this back now, I probably didn't realize it when I was doing it, but this is definitely inspiration for how the drums ended up on the record. Very spare. Which is hard to do. We've mentioned this with Jonah, and Jonah, we were the first like band. We played his first gig with him, like the first band, I think, like real. I hate to say real band, but he plays with his family and stuff, and his brothers and sisters, like they have a band, but like to go out and play a gig, and there was a lot of that of just like you don't have to play it all at once, right? Like pull it back, dial it back, and he did, man. Like listening back to these recordings, I've noticed how well he did with that of just. When we would prod him to make it lighter, make it lighter, make it lighter, he did it, and on a song like that, like he's spot on. So the trick is that the tempo doesn't change, and that's one thing that Jonah really nails here. Listening to it, so I talked about this a little bit earlier, but the eighth notes in 6/8 are the same as the quarter notes in 4/4 as far as the tempo is concerned. If that sounds confusing, that's because it is. It doesn't make any damn sense. So I have had this discussion with drummers about this exact song, drummers that we just heard play. All right? I'm naming names. I would say that the first part of the song is in 3/4 time because quarter notes would then continue as quarter notes when it goes into the chorus, right? Like a quarter note would be a quarter note. But what they're telling me is that it has a 6/8 feel. All right? So I think that is the difference between 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which would be like a waltz. Or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which would be the 6/8, would be the 6/8 time. But either way, the beat is the beat. So it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That beat stays consistent. You can put a metronome on it and it just clicks away the whole time. The only thing that changes is do you hit it 3 times or 6 times in a bar, or do you hit it 4 times in a bar? All right, that's enough of me babbling on about this. But I think that that's the key that Jonah gets in the song is he rides that quarter note the entire tune, and then that way we don't speed up and slow down going into the chorus. Speaking of arguing with drummers, this was also an obvious choice when we started exploring songs as a three-piece using the dendrological method. So let's play a track from January of 2024. This is the three-piece. The three of us fall down trees playing Water Finds Its Way.
They don't make them like they used to, except for hypocrites and voodoo, rubber bands and mouse traps and bad advice. And though our fears have different names, we stand and face them all the same and try to build from ashes something nice.
It's a nice little walk down there, Porkchop.
Yeah.
So in this version of the dendrological method, where we arrange songs based on the shape of a tree, the bass is the roots, the acoustic guitar, like the finger-picked acoustic, is the trunk, and the sax would be the branches, like adding the flourishes. And you can very clearly hear how that is like laid out within the tune. The bass is busier than it ended up being on the final record, but it's nice. Like there's like a nice little bouncy walks that are in there that kind of add to the airiness of the song. And I think that's one of the cool things. The cool things about this song is what I'm doing has not changed, right? Like except for that very first version, everything after that, I've been finger picking the songs the exact same way. I did play electric guitar with Scott, but that's really the only difference. But what everybody else is doing in the background completely like changes from like a nice airy, bouncy tune to very autumnal, to having sort of a drive in the way Scott was doing it. Like all of it completely sort of changes the feel, whereas what I'm doing doesn't shift at all in any way. So that means that you guys are important, not just me. Not much changed from there for the official demos either, but the backing vocals were added for the first time.
But times change, water finds its way. No one can hope to stand against the tide. Heaven help the fool who tries.
So very like quiet approach to the backing vocals there. I'm still singing with some force with the lead vocals, but the backing vocals are almost angelic. Is that one of the times you thought that there was a woman singing with me there, Nolin?
Yeah, probably.
There's a cool little counter melody at the end of that I'm really proud of. As the lead vocal goes down, heaven help the fool who tried, the harmony vocal goes up, heaven help the fool who tried, like that. And the middle note and the way that those two notes hit together almost has like a tension to it too, or maybe it's like a little dissonance, like it's not exactly perfect, but it sounds good together. We started recording in earnest on February the 19th, 2024. Ernest wasn't very happy about it.
Is that the name of the shed?
It should be. I cut electric guitar, lead vocals, and backing vocals the night of February 19th, so that would have probably been a Monday night, since you guys usually come over on Tuesdays. This was the third song that we recorded, so still no pedal board. All of the tone is coming from my amp and my guitar. I am playing electric guitar on this, not acoustic, and I did it in a slightly different way than I usually play. Electric guitar is funny for me because I am first and foremost an acoustic guitar player. Like that's what I'm most comfortable on. I've played 90% of the guitar I've played in my life has been on acoustic, maybe higher than that. For the last quite a while, I've had an electric guitar in the quiver, and I prefer it for playing lead, obviously. But as far as like when I'm just going to grab something sitting around the house or write a song or whatever, I grab that acoustic. And we've definitely mentioned it in the show, and a lot of bands, just for simplicity's sake, I put a distortion pedal on it, and that was the only guitar I played even when I was playing leads and stuff. But there's certain things like with an electric guitar, it's a different instrument, and I think anybody that's not a guitar player probably wouldn't think about that or realize it, but the tension that you put on the strings is amplified 1,000 times. And so I'm an aggressive acoustic guitar player. And I've got a strong like right hand, which I think makes me a pretty solid rhythm player. But that doesn't translate well to an electric where you're gonna pitch it out if you crank down on it too hard. Electric sounds much harder than it is because it's amplified. And so what I did was I cranked the volume up on the amp, and then I played as lightly as I could possibly play. And so my fingers are just barely tickling the strings. And you have to be careful when you have the volume really high, because if you play it too hard, it will overdrive, which is what gives it a cool, crunchy, like rock and roll sound. Think like Keith Richards, Rolling Stones sort of sound. But it's not what you want on this song, so I wanted to keep it clean and crisp. And so what I did, I turned the volume up, and then I just played as light as I could possibly play, and I get this really like clean tone with just a little reverb in the background. So I got like a really like sort of airy, shimmery thing going on there. I think it sounds really pretty. I also think it sounds wet. I think that might be a terminology that you use, like dry and wet, when you're referencing how much of an effect like you're putting on a track. But something about the way it's like washed in that reverb, like it has like it's like slicked up metal, right? Like your car after you run it through the wash. Mm-hmm. You know a little bit about that, don't you, Nolin? Washing cars. So, speaking of Nolin, he didn't make the recording on February the 20th. I did not know why on that day. Porkchop and I worked exclusively on the bass for Water Finds Its Way on that day. This was one of those, like, it was just me and you in here, and we kept passing that bass back and forth. We did struggle a little bit with this one. Hope everybody's all right. Rain, sirens, all kinds of cool sounds in the shed today. So I think at first, we were overcomplicating it, and then we just stripped it all the way down to let's just play the root note and see what happens, and that was where we really kind of found our groove, and then you sort of went in from that root note and added some little flourishes that you had in there before, but very sparingly. It's a very spare bass line, but I think it works really well. So let's play that. So we had a good, like, clean tone to it, but very bassy. Like, there's a lot of bottom end in that, and I think that was intentional, or at least it works, because there's not much bottom end in the guitar, right? Like, it's the guitar is kind of brighter and shimmerier. One thing though, the speed of what you're playing on the bass does actually pick up in the change. So even though the tempo of the song doesn't change, you get busier in the change, and I think that sort of adds to the feel that the song picks up speed right there. I think we're technically playing like in halftime in the verse, and because you move into the regular time during the chorus, it adds to that, like it adds to that feel. There's a lot of like some of the stuff we were learning with James Jamerson, like in this song, playing with those octaves and those fifths. That's really the base of what you're doing there, right? You're playing a root and then an octave and then walk into the next note.
Yeah, there's a lot of arpeggios and octaves. I mean, we were just messing around trying to find out exactly what would work in that part, especially, and it seemed to. I don't know. It did seem to add some movement to it without speeding it up.
Yeah, and I think that just playing the root notes, like or not just playing the root notes, but the focus on them, right? Playing sort of in halftime,
right,
during the verse part adds to the spaciness of that, right? Because there's so much bottom end, it just fills up the space when those guitar chords are kind of shimmering away. I think it works really well. I think it's a very nice bass line. Good job, Porkchop.
Thank you.
So after Porkchop left on the 20th, I spent the rest of the night working on a drum sound. So once again, would like to remind you, this was the third song that we did. So the first song that we did, the percussion for that song was the back of the Porkchop for President guitar. And then the second song was Night Terrors, which was a big metal filing cabinet, 2-drawer. And then it's like, all right, well, neither one of those is probably going to sound great. I'm sure I tried the Porkchop for President guitar. What can we do for this other song? And so I felt this pressure at this point in time, too, where the percussion needed to match, like, the theme of the song, too. Like, I was putting a lot of thought into it. You did suggest, though, that we should, like, add water to something to give it a wet sound.
A wet sound, yeah.
And I think I tried pretty much every pot and bucket that was anywhere on the property. Mama in the house was like, "What are you doing?" Which that is a thing that she said to me a lot of times over the course of my life. She's never fully surprised at the answer, right? Like, she asked the question, and then I'm like, I'm trying to find a pot or something to beat on to record drums for this song, and she's like, "Oh, well, why don't you use that giant pot that we use for barbecue sauce? It's like the big, like, outside cooker pot, you know, for low country boils and stuff. Why don't you use that? Because everything else you're beating on just sounds like a pot." That's what I wrote that quote down from Mama. Exactly. Everything else just sounds like a pot. One thing I did discover during this process is that stainless steel has a tonality to it that you can't that you don't get in cast iron and aluminum. Like, it has a resonance that cast iron and aluminum just don't have. They just tink. Still too brittle, though. It didn't work. I really, really wanted to simulate like a kick drum and a rim shot on the snare. I hadn't yet discovered the wooden filing cabinet and the box of thumbtacks that I would get on Modern Prometheus a little bit later on. But that would have probably, I don't know if the thumbtacks would have worked, but I definitely could have gotten the kick drum sound out of the side of that wooden filing cabinet. But anyway, in this instance, I hadn't come up with that yet. So what I finally landed on is Arlo's double-walled stainless steel water bowl. And it has a rubber bottom, and it's double-walled stainless, like a Stanley cup, you know. And I filled it about a third of the way full of water. And then I found a chunk of 2x4 outside in the yard somewhere, and I hit both of those things with what I refer to as the Grady Gray mallet. So it's this mallet, or a gavel, I guess you would call it, a gavel that I keep on my desk. It was my grandpa's, and it has stamped on the side. It says Grady Gray, and he had several little wooden tchotchkes. I don't know what you would call them, like hand-carved things that were made by this Grady Gray guy. I don't know who he was. He must have been dead by the time I was born, or I would have met him. My papa was like my best friend, and I hung out with him all the time then. But one of the things was this little wooden gavel, and it was one of the things I got. It was like in his junk drawer that he had in the kitchen, and so after he passed away, my grandma kind of let me go through and pick out some stuff. And I'm not a smart man. I'm not one that goes through and finds the things that are actually of value. I went through, like, I took his old-timer pocket knife, Japanese bayonet that it was a spoil of war from World War II, and this little wooden mallet. So anyway, it sits on my desk, and I used it to play the water bowl in the 2x4. So this is what that sounds like. All right, let's play the percussion for you. world music, I think.
Yeah.
It's unique, man. I mean, it's unique and it sounds good. I can remember like pouring out a little bit of water and adding a little water back to it to try to get the sound like exactly like I wanted it to be. So when you hear that like very clear thwing, like that sort of sound, that is me striking the bottom of the water bowl on the rubber part with the wooden mallet and that the resonance of the bowl itself. The high-pitched like ting that you hear is me hitting the metal with the wooden mallet, kind of up near the top where the double walls are really close together. And the talk is when I hit the wooden block with the wooden mallet. It took forever for me to get my body to do those motions. Like, it's such an unnatural thing and it's not close together. And, you know, like drummers, they're very particular about like where their drums are set up so they know exactly where they are. But this, I'm just like sitting in a chair at my desk with a water bowl. Just picture this, okay? I'm sitting in my chair at my desk and I've got two microphones, one pointing at a wooden block that's in my lap and the other pointing at a double-walled stainless steel water bowl that I'm holding up like in my hand with a wooden mallet, and then I'm like trying to hit two different parts of the water bowl and the wood block and hold it in time. It's very, very unnatural, and it took a lot of like work to get the muscle memory to just work right. The other thing is I had to hold the water bowl for it to reverberate. Like if I sat it on the desk, it didn't, like the vibrations would be muffled by the desk, so I had to hold it up like in my hand by the side, not even like underneath it or in a natural way, like gripped around the side, holding it up in the air. Well, you know, if you sit and just hold your hands up in the air for 4 minutes over the course of the song, they'll start to get tired. Now, you know, a third of the way up, I'd imagine it weighs what, like 5 pounds maybe, something like that. That 5 pounds is a ton by the end of the song, and I'm trying to hold it steady so I can hit it, you know, with a mallet. This was physically exhausting. This is an excruciating song to record, and I know y'all are all out there playing your little tiny fiddles for me, but this was a tough one. I did follow the bass. So one cool thing about this is one of the instances where the bass came before the rhythm instead of the percussion, instead of the other way around. And so I kind of followed what you were doing. So I'm playing in halftime during the verse, and then I pick it up and actually pick up the frequency of what I'm doing when we get to the chorus. You had an extra idea, Porkchop, around this time too, when we were doing all this. You wanted to add a bird call to the birdhouse line in the song. So apparently this is a talent of yours that Nolin and I, were unaware of at the time. That's not the only time that we found out about hidden talents of yours over the course of this recording process. But I thought this was pretty cool, so I've pulled it out here in isolation. This is Porkchop's bird call from Water Finds Its Way. So that was your idea. Where did that come from?
I don't know. I just thought it was like it would be neat to, there was a lot of sounds in the song by the Beatles, Yellow Submarine.
Yeah, for sure.
And I had been listening to the Beatles a pretty good bit, and one thing that when they remastered those, you can really hear what the sounds are. Mm-hmm. Hear the conversations and the whistle of the submarine and the different clinks and different things. And I just thought, if you've got the word, you're talking about a birdhouse, I was like, it'd be cool if you had a bird in there,
It's very cool. This is probably the first mention of the Beatles, but I don't know why. They're obviously a huge inspiration for this record. And I've talked about the Tom Waits side of it so much, but the Beatles' way of recording music was, they inspired just about everything that came after them. But a lot of the thought that went into the different instruments and found sounds that we were playing, that was all stuff that they were doing. I read this book one time. It was Beatles studio logs, and it was logs that the recording engineers had taken over the course of their recording sessions. And there were all of these cool things that they were just coming up with to do, Now, famously, one of the ones is John Lennon wanted to be hung upside down by his feet and pushed so he rocked back and forth over a microphone while he sang to create an ambulatory effect, right? Like this like that, you know? And so he didn't want to just sit there and move his head back and forth like I did, I guess. And so the record, obviously they were the Beatles, so you did anything they asked you to do, and they were trying to come up with a way of doing it. And George Martin found out, and he was like, "No, there's no way you're gonna hang it. Like, what if he dies? Like, there's no way." And so they finally ran the vocals through a Wurlitzer speaker. So, and that created the ambulatory effect, and it's the first recorded instance of that happening, which is very common now. I think that I remember reading in there that they were like creating the waves for Yellow Submarine with a chain from a chainsaw in a bathtub. And that was how they got like the wave crashing sounds. But so much of what they were just playing in the studio. They had all of the money and resources in the world, and anything they put out was going to be a hit. And they didn't have to tour or do any of the other stuff, and they just got to be the most creative studio band in the history of the world. I think that's amazing. Like, I'm so like I'm a Stones guy, and I always have been, and everything that happened in live music from that point on, you can thank the Stones for, which is hugely important. But everything that's happened in a studio, you know, you can thank the Beatles for that. And I think that's like, they were one of the greatest bands of all time, but probably the luckiest band of all time to just have the ability to just create.
They had the space.
Yeah, really cool. So anyway, we're the Beatles. We've gotten that far. The bird call is another little Easter egg, like on the record too. Like, to me, when I'm thinking about like the little inside joke of times change, water finds its way. For me, I think I was a little bit like resistant to it. I kind of wanted it to be subtle, subtle, almost buried in the background. I did like mess with the reverb a lot and the pan to try to make it sound like it was happening outside. This is one thing that almost seems counterintuitive to me. Like, you think when something's outside, you want the echoes to be really, you want big reverb, right? But in fact, there's not any. Like, there's no reverberation at all unless you're in the Grand Canyon. And so if you put a huge reverb on it, it sounds like it's in a really big room. It doesn't sound like it's outside. So trying to make something sound farther away without reverb, I found to be pretty difficult. And I did use volume and panning to make it sound like at the end of the song, the bird moves from your left ear to your right ear and farther away from you, almost like it's flying away from you at the end of the bird call, which I thought was pretty cool. Just like the whistle at the beginning of Modern Prometheus, I spent way too much time trying to get this whistle to sound right. So on March 3rd, Nolin came over to work on the sax sound. So this was the famous day where it was just me and you. We did Night Terrors and like figured out how to get the sax to work right for that song. We also figured out how to get it to work for the soprano and recorded a soprano take for Water Finds Its Way. And we held on to that sax take until the very end, I'm pretty sure. Like, this was one of the songs, like right before I did the final mixes, where we had that conversation of like, some of this stuff I think we need to cut. Like, I don't think it's adding anything to the songs. And we pulled the sax out of a couple of tracks and a few other things too. But anyway, I was listening back to it now and it sounds really good. Maybe we should have left it in there. All right. So this is like the first mixes. So this is the original vocals and everything. So like the first mixes we did of Water Finds Its Way.
But times change, water finds its way. No one can hope to stand against the tide. Heaven help the fool who tries. Kiss me in a week. Please don't mumble when you speak.
Really nice, Nolan.
Thank you.
You probably should have left it on there. No, yeah, I mean, if you think about it though, like, and this is kind of what we were talking about when we were doing, and I know you've mentioned this, is like, is this a record or is this a sax record sort of thing? But even beyond that, like, thinking about how we're using the lead instruments and how they influence the songs, right? And like the harmonica and what it represents, and the sax is kind of the external world pushing in, and my guitar is me fighting back. This one is such a reflective song that having that space in between the lyrics to sort of reset, and it is a very lyrically heavy song too, like, I think that adds to the atmosphere, and as good as the sax was, like, it didn't let the song breathe quite enough to feel as reflective as we wanted the song to feel, especially once we figured out it was going to be the last song on the first side. It kind of takes away from that sort of crashing waves thing that I was talking about. You can also hear the vocals were recorded on the condenser mics. It's a sort of thin. It's not quite all there. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds pretty good on this song, actually. But with all the other songs, I went back in October of 2024, one of the biggest decisions that we made over the course of recording, and I recut all the vocals for the record using the dynamic mic that I'm talking into right now, the SM7B, and got much better results. So listen, this is the final vocals from Water Finds Its Way. I've isolated them out right here. You can hide inside your head or crawl beneath the bed, hold your breath, try not to make a sound. You can change your name to Job, don a scapular and robe, and pray what goes around won't come around. But times change, water finds its way, no one can hope to stand against the tide. And heaven help the fool who tries. So you hear a ton of reverb there. Like, obviously it's not that present when the music and everything's going on behind it. But this is one of the best examples of a thing that I figured out in the final mixes, where I would add more reverb to the backing vocals than I did to the lead vocals, and it made them sound like they were farther away in the room. There is sort of a ghosty element to those backing vocals. I mentioned angelic kind of earlier on, and I said that kind of in a joking way, but it really is sort of that feel, right, where it's like it's like an afterthought that's singing along. Like, it's not a very sharp harmony vocal. The lead vocals, though, remind me a lot of like a late era Leonard Cohen. Like, I'm really leaning into sort of the bassier aspects of my voice and that sort of resonance. And there's a couple of tricks to like doing that. So I know I've mentioned this here already, but singing bass vocals is harder, or not bass vocals, but the lower you're singing, the harder it is to find the notes, because they're farther away based on the way sound waves work, right? Like bass sound waves are less frequent, and they're much bigger than treble sound waves, which are closer together, more frequent, and shorter. And so because of that, you have to change your vocal cords more, and there's more room for error. That's why a lot of people don't sing low leads. So one of the things that you can do to make that a little easier is sing quietly. When I'm singing higher, I'm a loud person anyway, right? Like, I talk loud. Everything about me is loud. Part of it's that I can't hear, but the other part is that I'm very, I don't know, self-centered, or I want to be the center of attention. Singing quietly is not something that I do very often, but on this song I did. And you can really hear the difference between the demo, the official demo that I played a few minutes ago, where I am like singing out more in those demos, and there's a sharpness to my voice, whereas here it's big and round. Another thing is using the proximity effect of a microphone. So proximity effect states that the closer you get to the microphone, the more bass you're going to get and the less treble. And the farther away from the microphone, the more treble and the less bass. And this works with just about any instrument, but it's very present on dynamic microphones when you're talking into them. And I can let you hear it now. I'm going to start about where I'm talking right now, which is 6 inches or so away from the microphone, and then I'm going to move closer, and then I'm going to move farther away, singing the same note. Oh. And so you can hear how the bottom end like fills up when I get really close to the mic like this. I can really lean into the bottom end.
Oh, spooky.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm singing really quietly, and I'm singing really close, and that's how I dig into that sort of bassy thing. And it's almost exactly the same approach that I took to playing the electric guitar. I didn't think about that until this, but turning everything up really loud, getting closer to it, and then playing as quietly as I possibly can. When I finally got to the final mixes, that's another exercise in space, kind of similar to what I was talking about with Shadow. There's not much going on here, right? Like when we finally cut everything back, it's just percussion, guitar, bass, and these very restrained vocals. And so I really dialed in like the panning, so making sure that the instruments, every instrument had a thickness. So every instrument was 2 mono tracks to create a stereo track, right? And then I would spread those stereo tracks out farther or closer together to create a thickness for the instrument. And so everything, I think it was at like 10 was the thickness, 5 left and 5 right. And then I would pan that stereo track around the mix like you would think about instruments in a room. So the drums may be 10 ticks to the right and the bass is 10 ticks to the left. And so there's no overlap in those instruments, and it keeps creating like a surround sound. Like it moves everything out and gives it all of this extra space. And the voice stays right in the middle, like coming right at the face of the listener. And I'm trying to achieve the effect that the song is happening inside the listener's head. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I think this is one of the better examples of that. Like I wanted it to sound like the instruments were all around you, but the voice was coming from the center of your head, like it was your own thoughts. And this is representative of the internal nature of the album, right? Like really and truly, so the album is happening inside the shed, and the beginning of the record is like opening the shed door and coming inside, and then the end of the record, the door closes behind the character as he leaves. But really, like, all of these stories and things, the thoughts are happening inside the character's head, even though the character's in the shed. So if it's a movie, like, it could really all just be the main character sitting on the couch, like, staring off into space. Like, there doesn't have to be any action. That's one of the reasons the idea that I mentioned earlier about having the soundscapes of me, like, moving around the shed didn't make a whole lot of sense, is because it's not the physical movement of the character. It's what's going on inside the character's brain that is the action in the story. And I think that's unique to music in a way. Like, if you think about it, like, movies have such a visual element to it, and even though there can be voiceover in the background, like telling you what's going on, usually it's like a narrative voiceover, like telling you the story or explaining context, or like the character is monologuing to you in this very particular way. And even in a book, you know, things can be described about what people are thinking, even in with quotation marks, right? Like, books can get inside your head more than just about any other medium. But with music, you can kind of create the visual thing that's happening in the movie that has to be exterior. You can create that in an interior way. You can create mood with the music. And you can do that with visuals too, but they're always tied to visuals. Whereas with music, it's an emotional mood, like it's an internal mood, and you can sing these songs. You can narrate in a way that it sounds like it's coming from inside the character's head or inside your own head, right? Like, I've been lost in songs before where, you know, I mentioned Leonard Cohen, and he's one of those where you feel like he's singing these words that are coming out of you in a very particular way. And I don't know if I've achieved that here with this song, but that's definitely like what I was going for. And I think this song is probably more representative of that aspect of production and what I was trying to get across with this album than any of the others. But whether or not I was successful, that's up to everybody else. So why not play the final masters here, and let's see what everybody thinks. From the Fall Down Trees debut album, Night Terrors, this is the 5th track, the last track on side 1, Water Finds Its Way. You can hide behind a mask, behind a screen, behind a casket, curse your neighbors as they're walking down the street. Paint shadows on the walls, run naked down the halls, ball your fists and cry and spit, stamp your feet. You can hide inside your head or crawl beneath the bed, hold your breath, try not to make a sound. You can change your name to Job,
Don a scapular and robe and pray what goes around won't come around. But times change, water finds its way. No one can hope to stand against the tide. And heaven help the fool who tries. Kiss me in a week. Please don't mumble when you speak. It's hard enough to hear you sobbing through the walls. We'll get through this somehow. Look back some years from now and say we're stronger than we realized after all. We'll plant a garden in the spring, build a birdhouse by the swing, and a sunflower teepee for the kids. We'll quit our 9-to-5s, reinvigorate our minds, and trust that it'll work out in the end. 'Cause times change, water finds its way. No one can hope to stand against the tide. And heaven help the fool who tries. Except for hypocrites and voodoo, rubber bands and mousetraps and bad advice. And though our fears have different names, we stand and face them all the same, and try to build from ashes something nice. And pray to God what happened once won't happen twice. 'Cause times change, water finds its way. No one can hope to stand against the tide. Heaven help the fool who tries.
That was Water Finds Its Way from Night Terrors, the debut album from Fall Down Trees, now available on all streaming services. So go download it: Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon, YouTube, everywhere music is listened to for free. Just go listen to it. We just want you to listen to it in the podcast. We just want you to like us. That's all. And I hope you enjoyed it. This is one of those songs that is frequently people frequently tell me that this is their favorite song from the record. I think part of that is it's one of the most accessible songs on the record. Like it's, I don't want to say it sounds normal because it still has its weirdness to it, but it does sound familiar.
Yeah.
Maybe the word. There is a spot in the tune, so it's when I sing the "Quit Our 9-to-5s" line where I hit a sour chord on the guitar. I was mentioning earlier how it's hard for me to wrap my thumb around and like hit that bass note, and I think I hit the wrong note or something, and it's sour. And I left it in there, and I don't know why. Like I don't really know why. Because I mean, in that moment, I could have just fixed it or done another take or whatever. But for whatever reason, I decided to leave that sour chord in there, and it's less obvious with all the other instruments actually hitting the correct note, in the background. But it is right after the bird call. And I think one thing those two things do is they sort of, they had like a little dissonance or a little tension. They break up the smoothness and the lullness of the song. Like it's another one of those little Easter eggs where it's just like a little thing in there that tells you that something's not quite right. Like the character's telling you times change and water finds its way and all of these things, but something's just not quite right. All in all, though, I think that the song was a success and did exactly what we wanted it to do at this part, to be sort of like an ending song for the first half, right? Like it's almost like it does wrap up what's happening in the first part of the record.
Yeah, it's and I meant to mention this earlier. Just I want to kick myself if I don't say this. When I first heard the finished version of the lyrics, you were talking about earlier what all led to you writing this song.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know all of that. I didn't know very much of that.
Yeah.
But when I heard this song, when you talk about water finding its way, the whole thing that got me is I envisioned someone surviving a flood, because the water is going to move where it wants to move, and
no one can hope to stand against the tide.
Right, and the line that about praying to God that what happened once won't happen twice. It's like you survive the flood and you rebuild. It might not be exactly the same, but you're going to rebuild. I mean, we had flooding not far from us with the hurricane that came through last year, and that brought it back to my mind. That it's just I don't know. It's I have to say that's what that song hit me when I heard it. It's you're almost trying to convince yourself everything is hunky dory, everything's great, even though you're watching everything washed away, but you're just up out of the water enough to survive, and then once the water goes back down and it's peaceful back in its banks again, you start rebuilding. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never really considered that, but it does fit everything perfectly. And I think another beautiful thing about, if you're vague enough in a song, people can put their own
spin. Yeah.
I played this song. I did the Other Folk in Greenville. God, I wish I could think of the name of the venue where we played. It was an art studio. And so Other Folk is fantastic. Go find them on, I think there's a Asheville chapter version of it too. But go find them on the social medias, especially if you're in the Greenville area. And what they do is they host these nights that the focus is directly on the music and the songwriting. And, I was complaining earlier about how there's not much of that around here, and there's not much. But the people that are doing it, like supporting them as much as we possibly can, is hugely important. And hats off to Chris and the Other Folk team for what they put on. I think they were 6 musicians that played. We all played 15-minute sets each, and in a completely quiet venue with everybody looking directly at you while you play, And it was a wide variety of music, and people from, not just from Greenville. So, obviously I'm from Anderson, which is 30 minutes down the road. There were a couple of Greenville musicians, and then there were some folks from Asheville and somebody from Charlotte too, if I'm not mistaken. And all of them were very different, like in the music that they played. I was kind of the old guy with a little bit of a country edge, but I think I held my own. And part of it, they were like, tell stories about your songs, and I'm like, all right. How much time we got? Because I'll take the night. But this is the song that I closed with, and it was an incredible experience playing the gig, just because so seldom have I played to a captive audience like that. And I fed off of it like nobody's business, but I also gave them, very similar to this podcast, I gave them a deeper look inside than I usually do, right? And it got kind of heavy over the course of the show. But seemed to be appreciated. This song was the last song that I played, and it works really well on an acoustic guitar anyway, but it seemed to hit people really hard. And I wonder how much of that, even subconsciously, was the flood, because this was much closer. Like it was even more raw. It's still raw. Like it's still rough up there in that area. But it was even more raw then, and definitely all of the Asheville folks that were there, and there were a bunch of them. The songs that they were playing at that point in time were directly, related or in response to, like, that was what they were talking about and what was so present in their mind. And I didn't really make that connection at that point in time, but there was a level of empathy that we were all sharing, because that was, a pain we all felt. Like, that area of the country is really important to me too, but it's also a musical hotbed and one of the best ones we have in the South. So a flood, that's very, That's very solid, Chop. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
You always got a good metaphor there towards the end of the show. You bust on us.
Well, I try.
So this is the end of side one. As I mentioned, the last song that takes place before midnight and the light turns off. So coming up in the future episodes, like side two, they're going to get significantly darker. Like, it's a different feel and a different vibe. And that's when I think Water Finds Its Way is kind of the end of that light nostalgic vibe. So we'll get into that stuff next. And we also have a better grasp of how to use our tools on side two. I think the whole album feels like a piece, and Nolin, that's something you and I have talked about. Like, it's a good listening experience from front to back. I think it was meant to be that way, at least, and it feels that way to me when I listen to it. And I know that's the way I listen to albums, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily. Like, a lot of people aren't as used to that now as they used to be. And so I hope that comes across. And I think the whole album is of a piece, but I think each side also works as its own piece. Each side has its own vibe and its own personality. Thanks for listening to Does It Make a Sound? We'll be back in a couple of weeks with episode 6, Shoot the Messenger, where we discover another of Porkchop's hidden abilities. And Nolin coins the term mariachi blues. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, and review the show on your favorite podcasting platform. Stay up to date with Does It Make a Sound and Fall Down Trees by following Fall Down Trees on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Links are in the description of this podcast. As independent artists, we need champions to spread the word about our work. So, if you find value in our music or this podcast, please share it with your friends on your social channels too. Just post it. You don't even have to say anything about it. Be mysterious. Just pop it up there and they'll be like, what? Does what make a sound? Somebody commented shark farts. And I didn't understand it first. I was like, why are you just sending me shark farts in a message? And then it dawned on me, does a shark fart make a sound?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. So thanks, Tiffany. We really appreciate that. Anyway, what was I talking about? We need champions. That's what we need. If you find value in our music or this podcast, share it with your friends on your social channels too. It's more valuable to us than an axe sharpening tutorial, and we promise our content is never dull. Come on, that was good.
That was good.
The Does It Make a Sound podcast and Fall Down Trees are proud partners of Guttersville Records, a collective of independent artists working together to be heard in a noisy digital space. So please like and subscribe to the Guttersville channels too. Make sure to listen to all of the music coming out on our little indie label. Be excited for Cowlick Moon. I think that's next up. Thanks for listening and for all of your Does It Make a Sound support. All right, for Porkchop Branch and Nolin McAlister, I'm Dustin Owens.
Timber!